a lot of people, myself included, have sometimes slipped into that ideology of like, when the boomers die, everything will be fine.
I feel like every generation feels that way, but I hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and watching that made that very clear to me that that is short-sighted in its own way. So yes, it is a documentary about the Boy State program, which I was unaware of. I didn't know that this was a thing that is organized by the American Legion in states all around the country. And Dustin, who is the owner of Pajiba, he, like you guys said, was very hopeful. He saw a lot of hope in there being liberal leftist kids in states like Texas who are inspired by figures like Bernie Sanders and become politically motivated because of that. And so he found a lot of hope in that. I found it extremely horrifying that there are like two of those kids out of 1,000 in Texas,
Mm-hmm.
and the other 998 are 17-year-old white boys screaming about abortion and guns. So that was not something I was very into. But yes.
Yeah, and we
Yes.
should point out that like the beginning of this film kind of establishes the bona fides of Boys State as an enterprise. You see, like a lot of famous, well-known people have been through the program. Bill Clinton, I think Samuel Alito, Cory
Yeah.
Booker
Cory
are all
Booker.
shown,
Yeah.
right? So
Nobody else
Dick
did this?
Cheney. Dick Cheney.
yeah, Dick Cheney. There you go.
Nobody else did this? I did this.
No.
Oh,
I did not
no.
know this
you
existed.
you did the
until I
actual.
watched
You
this
went to
movie.
the actual event.
Well, in California, it's not Boys State. It's co-ed, and it's called Youth in Government.
Mm.
I did this in high school, and we went to Sacramento and we took over. It's organized very differently than this. It was in multiple events, and the election actually happened before the final event ever happened, so that the final event, the week-long one, was just running the government. But you had two camps that you would go to leading up to it, and then the second of those camps, you elect everybody, and you did it like it was wild. I mean, it's like you really do it. It was a giant warehouse. I'll never forget this, by the way. I was a massive nerd, didn't have any friends. I went to I remember very vividly going to the second camp with a Walkman and a single cassette tape that was a blank cassette that I had recorded one song from the radio on. And that song was Smells Like Teen Spirit.
Oh,
and
of
I
course.
listened, and this dates me very specifically. I'm older than all of you. And I listened to that song on repeat, just rewound it and played it and rewound it and played it, and was sullen and nerdy and didn't have any friends and felt bad for myself. And, grunge was perfect for me. Anyway, but it was really, really a cool experience, because in the second weekend, there's this giant warehouse, and all of the different counties of California would announce, just like you see at the conventions that are happening now, the Democratic National Convention, the Republican National Convention. They are very different these days because of COVID and being remote. But back in, every other year that they've done these, they have these big, pomp and circumstance, and they go, we'd like to throw our 48 delegates behind, Barack Obama or whatever. Everybody cheers. And that's what a bunch of teenagers were doing. We would be like, we want to throw our delegation behind, Tom from Rancho Cucamonga. Yay! And everybody would cheer, and it was this massive party. And then the week of actually being in Sacramento was all business. It was like you were running the government. We were passing laws. We were, and you see some of that in this documentary, but it really wasn't about, it seems like Boys State is mostly about the election, and then very little of the actual, it's like form the platform, do all the ramp up to what it would be like to govern, and then that you're done. And our experience was actually a week of governing, or maybe it was a weekend. I think it was a full week, but I was too chicken. I was just so scared of anybody noticing me at that point in my life that I didn't run for anything. I didn't even want to be in the political side. I think I went into the judicial branch, and I was involved in the judicial branch.
Wait. So Jeff, why did you do this in the first place?
I have no recollection of wanting to.
It was
Somebody just tricked you
involuntary
off.
boys state,
Yeah,
basically.
it just happened.
No, I want to be very clear. It was not boys' state. It was this youth in government, and it was absolutely 100% co-ed, which I think makes a big difference. And there was a lot of things in that time in my life where I think my parents just signed me up for stuff, and I would just do it. I don't remember like saying to myself, "I want to do that," but maybe I did. I don't recall.
Devendra Hardor, curious, what did you think of this movie?
Hey, I kind of follow along Roxana's side here because I found this movie absolutely terrifying. It reminded me of the first time I went to Amherst College, which is where I met David Chen, and we were roommates at one point. But let me just say, Amherst College, the whitest place I've ever been, and the shock of being there and of going there from living in like Hartford, where there is Hartford, Connecticut, not a huge city, but it's a city and it's a diverse city, and there's all sorts of people. Yeah, it was a very shocking experience. So to see this, I really felt for poor Stephen Garza
Oh my
and
god.
poor Renee Otero, who are like there aren't many people of color in this group, but there are some. But they're the outspoken ones. They're the ones who are not also they're pushing against the tide of conservatism in this. Certainly I didn't feel the same way to Amherst. Like Amherst was like it was just the culture shock of where I was that was different for me. But yeah, I found this movie absolutely terrifying because it's like so many of these kids, all of these kids really, especially like Ben Feinstein, which is
Ugh.
a really like a super villain of like
Oh my God.
ideology, just like a really fascinating characterization of kind of like a sociopath or somebody who's really built up this
I
belief
think we need to be
system.
real careful. Like
Yeah.
these are
Yeah.
actual people and
Yeah.
actual kids. You know, I think we need to be
yeah.
real careful about that kind of stuff.
I agree. I agree with Jeff.
yeah.
Agree with Jeff.
Sure, okay, fine.
These are not
I'm gonna-
characters in a movie, right? They're people.
Which I don't
they're
disagree
people,
with,
but
but I also
yeah.
feel like you did agree to be in a documentary.
Well,
I'm
just
describing what I see
let
on
me
screen,
counter that
that's all.
too. Let me counter that by saying that, like, you know, these kids are engaged in what is essentially a game. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
it's not like they're
Yes.
actually going out and like impacting people's lives in any way. In at least in the events depicted, it's basically if you told me, hey, you're in a game, you know, like it's like Ender's Game, right? Like you're a kid. You told me like, hey, you need to win no matter what the cost.
Yeah.
They're gonna do terrible things. It's not but it's not necessarily like they're sociopaths. It's a
Sure,
function of the
sure.
situation that they are in.
Listen, okay. Before you guys push back, I'm judging everything I see in the movie, and everything I see Ben Feinstein do, and a lot of other people do, is people who are really building up these belief systems based on what these teenage boys are so against abortion
Right.
because why? Because they heard it on the radio? Because their parents told them this? Like they're full of
Yes.
this conviction, which is terrifying to me. And Ender's Game is probably a good example, Dave, because we all know how that story ends. And I feel like the
Yeah, I
story
guess-
for a lot of these kids
guess
is
that
going
wasn't
to
the best
end.
example.
Yeah,
It's a very
it's gonna
prescient
end-
example.
it's going to end with these kids in office because they're the ones driven to run for office and be politically minded. They're going to be successful. Ben Feinstein is going to be super successful in life, doing politically minded things, and you can kind of track where things are heading. It makes me so goddamn tired and so sad for the state of America, because also I didn't know this thing existed. I've never heard of Boy State. I've never seen these huge like political conventions where they take over a Capitol building. Okay, your thing sounds better, Jeff, but to me, watching this whole thing, it is such a machine of churning out little conservative clones to just say the same things and really don't believe in anything too. But so the movie is fascinating. I think it's terrifying, but the movie is fascinating mainly because Stephen Garza is what a good like protagonist to kind of center this around, because he just seems like a good kid who's trying to be fair and trying to do something good for everybody, but he has to push back against so much of this. I was also really fascinated. There are things we learned, like there's a guy, who is it, Robert McDougal? That
Mhm.
guy, right? The guy who is just like, you look at him, that guy would star in Friday Night Lights.
That's
That
Tim
guy would.
Riggins.
That's
It's
Tim.
Tim
Well,
Riggins.
no, he's Street before Street becomes kind of an outcast because he is no longer a perfect human being. But Robert McDougal looks like the perfect representation of popular high school guy and high school jock, and I'm really interested in him as a character because we're going to talk about some of this in spoilers, but things change and he evolves as a person just within this documentary from what we see. So it's a fascinating movie, but it is absolutely terrifying because yeah, I've never heard of this before, but I guess it makes sense. Like these little like these people who love politics and who just are built to do it and seem like guided into politics in America, like they have to come out of somewhere. And apparently they come out of this. So yeah, I'm terrified.
Jeff Kanata, what did you think of Boys State?
Well, Dave, I guess you could say my thoughts about Boys State are best summed up in the form of a limerick. This documentary surpasses a year's worth of government classes. More timely than a tweet, on the edge of my seat, I sat perched like Renee's tiny glasses.
Wow.
Love
Nice.
those glasses.
Brought it back for the thing that I didn't foresee at the end there. Nicely done, Jeff.
Those glasses were everything to me, man. Those glasses were so.
He's such an
like,
old soul.
Yes,
type thing.
that's
Like,
exactly the
it's
phrase I was
amazing.
going to use.
Yeah.
Now here, okay, so I have a lot to say about this movie. This might be my favorite movie of the year.
Wow.
And I think it's kind of everything right now. The first thing I want to say is no one should ever record what 17-year-old boys think ever. Having been one,
I agree.
And this is one of the reasons that I feel like we have to tread lightly on being too harsh on these kids, because they are 17-year-old boys and they know fuck all about anything, right? So
sure.
The reason I come away on the hopeful side of the aisle here is that there are old souls in this movie, and they are very inspiring to me. There is a large contingent of the kids in this film that are just having a good time. They're just playing a game. Some of them don't even understand the game they're playing, and many of them are play acting at what they think is supposed to be the things that come out of their mouths. Robert McDougall is the perfect example of this, right? He explicitly says it. He goes, I don't believe half the shit I say. This is what you're supposed to say, right? This is the most beautiful, the most beautiful line. So it's like exquisite. You couldn't write it more perfectly. Is when he's being interviewed, Robert is being interviewed, and he goes, that's how politics works, I think. He says, I think at the end, unironically, like that's just what I think. It is so beautiful. And that I think is everything. Now I may be coming at this slightly different in the sense that I experienced this kind of thing firsthand. And I hear, Devindra, your takeaway from the movie is so not my takeaway. Like, I truly believe that the best way to learn anything is to be inside the systems of the things. Why I love video games so much, right? You learn about a thing by doing. You learn about a thing by being inside the systems. And I gained a much better understanding of government through my experience with this youth in government thing in California. And I would argue that many of these kids, they may not even register it yet, but they are understanding the machinations of government in a way that you could never learn from a book, that you could never learn from the outside looking in. Being inside it, dealing with it, I think is a very, very profound and positive thing. But many of them, all of us, even if you haven't been part of an experience like this one, all of us have been in high school and seen people run for student government. And you know that there are most of the people involved in that have no fucking idea what's going on. And they say, we're going to have pizza for every lunch, and I'm going to have, soda fountains that, every water fountain is going to have Coca-Cola in it. And it's just, it's nonsense play acting, right? But then this movie also has these old souls, these kids who it actually does mean something to them. It actually does resonate on a deeper level. They care, they think, what comes out of their mouths matters to them. They want to be authentic. They want to actually participate in this. And they're not the majority. They're not even, they're not even
They're a minuscule proportion
and
of
yet
this entire
that
event.
is okay because it's always just going to be a few kids for whom this really fucking matters. And the fact that we get to see that, and there are these kids and they do care and they are inspiring their peers, and other kids see that and go, huh, wow, it's not just a game of lies. It really, if
Sure.
someone speaks authentically, it really can matter. It really can move the needle. And that is what we all sort of fundamentally crave. It's to me, the movie is very hopeful, especially, in a place like Texas, like the fact that this takes place in Texas and you see this youthful energy there. Man, I was so moved by this movie. I was so inspired by these kids, and I came away thinking, there's a lot of hope. Yeah, it's bleak, and there are things that happen in this movie that you're like, there's a lot of people learning the wrong lessons from the adults right now. And I don't think that's a surprise to any of us, right? We see what the adults are doing, and many of us are upset about that precisely for that reason. It's because kids go, oh, that's how it's supposed to be done.
Right.
But there is enough of a sliver of people who really believe it and really care. And the message of this movie is like, that matters. That makes a difference. And that is important. And I think for me, that was my takeaway. And that's one of the reasons why I think this movie is so beautiful.
Roxana, are you persuaded at all, or does that hearing Jeff talk about that make you kind of change your opinion at all about the film? Just curious.
No.
It was like it's a very stirring. It's a very stirring.
Very good.
Right.
Articulation, Jeff.
Yeah,
But-
it was very evocatively said, and I can understand all of the positive feelings you get from somebody like Steven or somebody like Renee. But for me, it was very difficult to watch two young men of color basically have to prove their selfhood over and over again to this group of predominantly white young men who seemed like they already had their minds made up. So I agree that there's something very hopeful about that, because I think naturally we sympathize with people who face down the odds and are willing to go where their opinion might be overwhelmed by others. And so I think there's something about that that is very naturally empathetic for us. But it is also one of those things to me where it's like, for every one kid like Steven or Renee, there are those 1,100 other kids who, yeah, they are just parroting what they hear from their parents or at church or at school or on Fox News or by Ben Shapiro or all these other people who are mentioned in the documentary. And there are a solid percentage of those kids who don't change their minds over the course of the documentary. So for me, it was very much a portrait of the tribalism that we find ourselves in and how entrenched people can become at that at a very young age. And I agree overall that I don't want to diminish teenage experiences. I mean, 9/11 happened when I was in high school. I marched against the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. I was racially profiled after 9/11. I know what it's like to be a teenager, right? Who like has political opinions and who's living through something and is predominantly shaped by that. But it also is one of those things too, and I think Devendra said this, where it's like, what part of your lived experience are these opinions coming from? And when there isn't a lot of lived experience to trace back, but you're still clinging to that ideology, that is very deeply unsettling for me. So yeah, I definitely took the opposite tack of like, Steven's awesome, Renee's awesome. I even have a little bit of a hopeful vibe for Rob, who gave me like,
Yeah.
Josh Hartnett from Virgin Suicides energy. But
Listen, his
but-
chin is so perfect. It is too perfect. Okay.
I think that saying that 1,100 kids versus 2 is a bit. I think that's a bit inaccurate, right? The characters that we have in this movie would not have proceeded as far as they did, progressed as far as they did in the film if they were the only 2 that thought that way, right? And I totally get where you're coming from, Roxana. There is a deeply unsettling element to this movie, and I was not comfortable the entire time I was watching it. It is really hard to watch this frat boy mentality. But again, any group of 17-year-old kids, especially predominantly white ones, especially the kids that self-select into this kind of a program, which is probably pretty well-off kids, is going to sort of result in some frat boyism. And I think even the best kids can fall into that group think at that age, and wanting to fit in and wanting to chant and wanting to, do those, all of that sort of group bonding stuff. I think it's a mistake that this program is not co-ed, because I think you would have wildly different platforms for both of these parties if they had to account for women, right? But I do think that there is this groundswell of support that you see these authentic kids receive in the movie, that I don't think you can just sweep under the rug and say it's all so bleak. I totally admit that there is a side to this movie that is really disturbing in the sense that, yes, they're just parroting things that they don't even believe, especially Robert saying things like, assuming that the audience feels a way, so I have to say the thing I think they think. And how many of the kids sitting in the audience think they have to think that, right? It's this self-fulfilling prophecy. But I do think there's a lot in the movie that pushes back against that.
Let me just say, Jeff, too, like, I like the idea that you're saying that the best way to learn some of these things is to experience it. And if I was in high school and something, maybe not exactly boy state, because I think the gender separation there is ridiculous, but something like what you went through, I would have jumped to it. I would have totally done it. What terrifies me about this movie is the way it is sort of a machine for kind of one type of thinking. That's all. Like, yeah, we see these young, like, heroes of color, which is apparently the trend now, right? Like, it feels like a lot of America's waiting for people of color to save them, and I feel like that's kind of harsh too. Like, it's a lot to put on people, and these two kids are just like, Renee's the first thing he gets up to do, a lot of folks start chanting for him to resign because they disagree with the way he made a decision, even though he made apparently the right decision under the rules. It's that sort of thing. And eventually he is vindicated, but it's a fight, and it's not a fight we saw a lot of, like, other people aren't fighting to justify themselves. They're all just kind of going with the tide. So
yeah,
that's just what's a little terrifying to me.
There's something like visceral just about this situation on a visual level, right? I mean, I'll give an example. I went to go see Anthony Jeselnik once in a Seattle theater, right? Do you guys know who Anthony Jeselnik is?
No.
Yes.
He's like
stand-up comic.
Kind of like a shock comic, right? Like, every one of his he does like all one-liners, like it's all one-liners, or not one-liners, but it's like all kind of like set up payoff, like really like some comics are very free-flowing and it's like they're telling you a story. He's like, his whole philosophy is every joke is like a home run. That's what he tries to do, and they all are framing his persona as like aggressively racist, misogynist, misanthropic, serial killer-esque, right? Like that's his like on stage persona. And I went with my friend who is Saudi Arabian, and we went to go see Anthony Jeselnik. And I enjoy Anthony Jeselnik because I think there's some skill in what he does. But 99% of that theater was white. And it was me and my Saudi Arabian friend listening to this guy on stage telling these very, very racist jokes, and everyone like surrounded by white people laughing at us. Not us, but like at the quote unquote jokes. And just like, this is like it's pretty uncomfortable, I have to say. Like, it's kind of this is kind of not super comfortable. And
it is very a beep meme of what the fuck.
Like,
yeah. So I just think there's something like there's.
Well, I don't think that's a. I mean, I would. Anybody that's not seen this movie, there's no point at which the movie makes fun of anybody.
No, I know, but the point I'm making is just like the visual of. I know there is some diversity in the crowd, but it's like it's very white. A huge portion of the crowd is white, and the visual of like all these white people like trying to bring down these people of color through means that I would say are at times
Shady?
underhanded and shady. Yeah, it just like kind of touches a chord on a visceral level, and I don't think that's like unreasonable to react to because we have a sitting president. Who in the last election cycle, spent a lot of time questioning the legitimacy of the first black president of the United States. So it's just like there is unfortunate echoes there, whether or not the movie intends that or not, whether or not the kids intend that or not. There's just something that hits on a visceral level when you see that in a movie like this. I'd like to get the spoilers because we're running a little bit long already in this review, but I'll just say I thought this movie was brilliant. It was purchased for $12 million at Sundance this year, which is a huge sum for a documentary. And I'm glad Apple bought it and gave it a platform. I think people are actually talking about this one, reviewing it. I think it's extraordinary. I think that we haven't really talked about the filmmaking of this movie, but it's excellent. It's there. There is an immersiveness to the filmmaking where these cameras get way up into these people's business. Like it's like feels like they're like feet away, like 3-4 feet away from these boys when they're doing this stuff.
It feels like it's shot like an episode of Succession. Too,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Like it is right up in there, but also it finds these moments of like beauty too. Like sometimes the camera will just pan to from the state building to the line of kids walking
Yes.
very casually. It's very graceful. Yeah.
In Succession they obviously have 100% control of the situation. Here,
Right.
they're capturing it as it takes place. So I can't recall seeing a documentary as visually dynamic and as electrifying as this one was, just on a filmmaking perspective. There's like a montage that happens early on in the movie when they're kind of trying to get signatures to be elected, and it's just like, whoa, this thing is really energizing and really well put together. So I just
Really
think
well edited too.
yeah,
Like it's
agreed.
propulsive.
On a filmmaking level, it's so good, and obviously has a lot to say about the state of our democracy. I side more with I don't know. I think I side with both of you. I'm like right down the middle of both the Roxana and Devindra opinion and also the Jeff opinion. There is a lot of hope there.
I
But go
I
ahead,
just
Jeff.
want to say that I don't. It's not that I don't see all the things that you guys are pointing out. I guess it's just my disposition is that watching this small group of kids stand up in the face of that and actually get attention and get move people and persuade people to me is inspiring. And I think
sure.
that we're both seeing the same movie. I'm not seeing the things you're seeing. I just come away from it going, it's extraordinary to see these kids deal with all of these things that you guys all rightfully pointed out as being fucked up things that they have to deal with, and yet doing it with grace and poise and aplomb and actually moving the needle a bit. Maybe it's not as much as the needle should move, or we'd all like the needle to move, but the fact that it moved at all is just in the in deep Texas. It's like
Sure.
I just found it very powerful.
Let me just say, Jeff, I felt that way up until we got to the things we're going to talk about in spoilers.
All right, are we ready to get to spoilers, Jeff? We ready to get to spoilers?
We are.
All right, let's get to spoilers for Boys State starting right now.
Now you're looking for the secret.
You're gonna see this coming.
No. But you won't find it because, of course,
You're not gonna see this coming.
you're not really looking.
I have been puzzling over how it works.
You don't really want to work it out.
Who's in the box? I have been dying to tell you.
I want to tell you my secret.
You want to be fooled.
All right. So, Roxana, I remember you writing in your review of this how discouraged you were about the fact that, let's just say, the ways in which their opponents try to overcome Renee and Steven are not exactly above board, right? They're not
No.
exactly super honorable, in your opinion.
No, I mean they're super racially tinged, I thought. I very much felt like everything happening with Renee. So basically what happens with Renee is they start calling for his impeachment. There is a loud minority of his party who want to impeach him as the state chairman. So they start an impeach Renee Instagram, which basically devolves into increasingly racist memes. which I found incredibly discouraging
Mhm.
and just
It's
really
just like you go straight to
depressing.
racism at the beginning.
Yeah,
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 yeah.
and it was very knee jerk. Like, oh, of course you guys did that, and of course there's eventually one that compares them with a monkey. Like of course that's where you went.
Can
Um,
I just jump in real quick though? And I 100% agree with all of that. I do think, again, my silver lining, which I guess I'm just Pollyanna in this conversation, which is, I'm fine. I'm Pollyanna in most conversations, but the silver lining for me is that the reason that he's supposedly, they want to impeach Renee is because they want to do some goofball bullshit, and he actually cares,
Sure.
right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
And I respect and understand that, but also in this moment where we've lived through 4 years of people doing increasingly goofball bullshit and getting away with it, it is very dispiriting to watch the reaction, like how quickly people mobilize to like undermine the person who is standing up to that goofball bullshit. So like I agree with you. Like there it is very much like of course you're targeting Renee because he's competent and intelligent, but I can very much understand, as we see him ultimately admitting at the end of the documentary, that he's worn down by it. That by
Mhm.
only a week of that, it has weighed on him immeasurably, you know? So I do think it's one of those things where it's like, I agree. Like they are targeting Stephen because he is politically active. He did do March for Our Lives. He's actually involved in these causes in which he is passionate about, and they use that against him. So again, for me, it's more just like I get it. Like I can understand thinking like kids like Renee and Steven are going to go out there and they might be the next AOC and they might be changing hearts and minds. We see some of that, but they still lose at the end of
Yeah.
the day.
Yeah.
You know, like I think it's one of those things where it's like, yes, the kids learned about government or whatever. What else they learned, I would think, is that those tactics work.
Mhm.
And
well,
that
we don't
is
know how much they lost by, right? We don't. We no one. They never give a
Jeff, let me just say,
I
having
No,
been
no, no,
through
no!
really
Don't say no.
2016,
Let me finish my comment. Let me
Yeah.
finish my comment, and
go
then you can
ahead,
just
go
say.
ahead.
Yeah.
We never know how much they lost by, right? Which is, I think would be fascinating information to have, right? And Beto lost, Stacey Abrams lost, a number of people lost, right, in the real world. And there are ways to look at that, like, fuck, we're fucked, it's all fucked. And there are ways to look at that where, like, well, we made some fucking amazing progress in those places, and you can't build Rome in a day, and it's amazing, and things are moving forward. And I think that, again, it's just my disposition, but I do think that it's not. Again, I'm not saying what you're saying is not true. It is true. I just think that there is a lot in this movie to come away feeling like, man, there's a lot to be encouraged by, I think.
I so Jeff, okay, you're done. Okay, let me just say this: like, once these kids lost, it was hard not to feel like 2016 all over again. It was hard not to feel like, man, we ran a good race and we did all the right things, and hey, technically Hillary won the most popular votes. It matters fuck all at the end of the
mhm.
day when the system can be broken by bad politics, and like that is there's hopefulness here for sure, but the ultimate conclusion of this movie is like these kids won because they did what they see the adults doing, and that to me is the dispiriting part. Like it is Lisa Simpson at the end of that Simpsons episode crying, at the Abraham Lincoln statue, because there's just so much that it's tough to believe in anything. I love that these two kids really made a mark and were able to, really rally a good portion of this group. And certainly for Stephen to become elected as governor, he had to be convincing. And I think people were, inspired by him. But
Yeah.
yeah, the real end of this movie is that it doesn't matter, because what you're pushing against is so powerful. One voice doesn't really make a difference. So I get you, Jeff, but it is like my heart
Well,
breaks for this movie. That's all.
I think that's a perfectly valid interpretation. I think that my takeaway from this movie is, holy shit, we finally got to see something in American culture in 2020 that says it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game.
Mm.
And
I-
that too infrequently is that message even conveyed beyond kindergarten. You know, I that's the kind of thing I teach my kids, and everywhere else in the world, it's just win, baby. And this movie, I felt my takeaway from this movie was it really is about how you play the game. Like nobody thinks that tactic is noble by the end of this movie, or just because they win some stupid game. Yes, that is indicative of the greater world at large as well.
That is what works in real life. Yeah.
Yeah, I just think for me it was like, yes, it's very noble how Steven and Renee played, but not to hammer this home. They still lost. Like I understand.
Did you expect Steven to beat Robert? Because I didn't. I was jumping out of my chair when he beat Robert. I couldn't believe it. I thought for sure he wasn't going to beat Robert. The fact that he gets as far as he does out of 1,100 kids, it's him and one other dude. Like that is not nothing. That's not
nothing. But it's also like
it's not nothing, but I think I personally am tired of feeling comforted by those sorts of appeasements.
Right.
For me,
appeasement. Sorry,
I mean,
the filmmakers weren't. Let's do this to make the audience feel good. It really happened.
I think Go ahead, Roxana. Go ahead.
Right, but I think taking away from it that like, yay, he ran a good race and it was noble and all that stuff. Like, I completely agree with all that. He did run a good race. It was noble. It was shocking that he beat Rob. Like, I don't disagree with any of that. But for me, what I am coming away with is the fact that like the tactics of Ben Feinstein, the tactics of smearing these kids, the tactics of turning their own sincere actions against them, that resonated with enough people that they lost. So I understand what you're saying, and the fact that like Steven is a very compelling figure and he probably changed some hearts and minds that day, et cetera, et cetera. It wasn't enough. So like I'm just very much on the other side of this.
So let me cut in and get super personal here. All right. First of all,
good. That'll de-escalate.
Yeah,
things.
that'll de-escalate the situation. So number one, Jeff, I recall like the episodes we recorded on the Slash Filmcast in the wake of Trump winning the election, and I remember the thing you said. I still remember it. It was something along the lines of like, what this election has shown is the bullies win. Right? I think you said something along those lines, and it stuck with me 4 years later. I still remember you saying that because, Jeff, but whether or not you can get it from any of our recent Slash Filmcast episodes, Jeff in general is very much a believer in the "it's how you play the game" situation. He's very much a believer in when we go low, they go high, or when they go low, we go high, right? And that should make a difference, right?
And even if it doesn't make a difference, it's important.
It's still worth doing regardless, right? That's kind of your belief. And you think that this movie in some way illustrates that. I'll say that
he didn't sacrifice who he was. Sorry to interrupt you. So I think Steven can hold his head high, and he does, and he is, and it's going to make him a better person, and it's going to anyway, go ahead, Dave.
Well, I think that, we haven't spoken about like our own personal politics or anything like that too much during the course of this review. But I will say for me, I am extremely tempted to be very, very cynical. Like I'm already a very pessimistic person by nature, as anyone listening to this podcast for even a minimum amount of time will know. So it's very easy for me to be pessimistic and say like there's no hope in anything. Why even try? The bullies win. It's all, the system is rigged, blah blah blah. Like there's no point. And I think what does give me hope is that the people who have put way more on the line than me, people like John Lewis, who recently passed, up until the end remained optimistic. And we had Barack Obama, former president of the United States, give a speech at the DNC this week. And I'm not as good of an orator as Obama, but I am going to read this paragraph from the speech. He said, "What we do echoes through the generations." I think he was trying to quote Gladiator, by the way. He should have just gone full Gladiator. Should have just gone full Gladiator and said,
"Shadows and Dust."
Yeah, what we do echoes in eternity. That's what Maximus Decimus Meridius said. Anyway, okay.
Did you say you weren't as good an orator as Obama? Because it seems like you're improving his speech.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah.
Anyway, Barack Obama says, quote, whatever our backgrounds, we're all the children of Americans who fought the good fight. Great-grandparents working in fire traps and sweatshops without rights or representation, farmers losing their dreams to dust, Irish and Italians and Asians and Latinos told to go back where they came from, Jews and Catholics, Muslims and Sikhs made to feel suspect for the way they worshipped, Black Americans chained and whipped and hanged, spit on for trying to sit at lunch counters, beaten for trying to vote. If anyone had a right to believe that this democracy did not work and could not work, it was those Americans, our ancestors. They were on the receiving end of a democracy that had fallen short all their lives. They knew how far the daily reality of America strayed from the myth. And yet, instead of giving up, they joined together and said, somehow, some way, we're going to make this work, end quote. And that really sticks with me, you know, because it's like,
Sure.
we are going through some shit right now in this country. But people who have come before us have gone through shit that is arguably way worse than what we're going through right now, and they did not give up. And I don't know that necessarily motivates me, but at least it shames me when I feel bad. You know what I mean? So anyway, I guess that's why I'm saying I'm falling in between you two, you know, in terms of your two perspectives, in the sense that, like, I agree with Roxana and Devindra. Like, we saw a lot of really upsetting things in this documentary. You know, we saw, like,
I agree with that too.
These people, right, like being verbally browbeaten and underhanded tactics triumphing and winning the day, and basically the worst notions of human nature being proven before our eyes in a Lord of the Flies-esque political situation.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time...
Which was, by the way, let me just make this very clear, a situation that was constructed by the American Legion, which is an organization doing this throughout the country. So this is happening, I don't know how many places, but a lot of places. So
I think it's pretty extraordinary. They just put kids in a room and let them do what they do.
Sure,
I think it's kind of extraordinary.
But I'm when I'm saying, Jeff, that this thing terrifies me, I am extrapolating to the many other events,
states where it's happening.
Yeah, where it's a handful of people maybe pushing against what's happening. I don't know if they're all very conservative leaning, but
I was going to say, I think one of the flaws of the documentary is that you don't get any context for what the American Legion is looking for in these students. You get some interviews. You get the kid saying that Jesus is his role model and naturally he's accepted into the program, but you don't get any other idea as to, like, what are their guiding questions?
Right.
What kind of student are they actually looking for?
Well, you also get some hint of it, Roxana, from the speeches that the American Legion people give a little bit. You kind of get a sense of their ethos a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But I agree with Devindra, where it's like you scale up that ideology and it just becomes sort of overwhelmingly disconcerting to consider.
Let me just say one more thing. And I know I've been meaning to beat a dead horse here, but I think as we're talking, my opinion is formulating even more in my head, even though my words aren't coming out very well. But here we go. There is a version of this movie where the 11 kids who we see at the beginning who are going to run for governor go up and give their speech, and the kid who goes, "Yeah, we're not gonna let masculinity forever. We gotta do." The kid who, like, shouts his ass off is against the other kid who shouts his ass off, right? Mm-hmm. That's a very legitimate possibility for how this could have gone for these filmmakers.
Yeah.
Right. There were 11 kids who got up behind that microphone and tried to present their version of what they thought would be the most popular thing amongst all the voters in that room, right? And we saw a number of them do the student body president pitch, where it's like, I just want to jump up and down and tell you we're going to party and we're going to destroy the other team, and it's all about win, 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 victory, victory, victory. And if you want to win, you got to get behind me because I'm masculine and awesome. And we saw those pitches happen. And the movie could have been just descent into madness, this descent into who can be worse, who can be more awful, and the politics of the moment could have been amplified 100 times because it could have been this viral war and both sides are, and that would have been a very interesting documentary. It would have been a disturbing descent into how bad these kids can be when given the opportunity to indulge in politics. But that's not what happened. That's not what actually happened. And that is what gives me so much hope. That's why I think it's a hopeful movie, because one kid got up there and went, hey, I actually believe in some stuff. Not only do I believe in some stuff, I believe in some stuff that I know you don't believe in. And guess what? I'm going to convince you that I'm still worth your vote, because you don't actually believe in the shit that I believe in. But guess what? Because I'm such a good person, and because I'm such an honest person, and because I'm so true to what I believe in, you're going to be inspired by that. That was his fucking strategy, and it worked up to a point. Yes, it didn't work in the final tally, but holy shit, that's extraordinary. That's extraordinary for 17-year-old boys in Texas to fucking vote for that guy to be one of two people at the end. Like that. Yes, I understand small victories aren't victories, right? But baby steps aren't steps, or whatever analogy we want to use. But it certainly wasn't what I expected. And it was, I think it's beautiful, man. I think it's fucking beautiful. And I've been recommending this movie to everyone because I think it shows the roadmap to winning over those people. It's not adopt what they think. It's not, hey, we gotta destroy them. It's be fucking real and say, hey, I believe in this, and I think I can earn your vote even if we don't agree on every single thing. Because the thing that's happening in this fucking country right now is that everybody thinks they have to destroy the other team, and no one wants to exist on the same planet as the people on the other team. It's an existential crisis on both sides, and people want to destroy each other. And that's fucking untenable. It's insanity. And here are these kids, these fucking 17-year-old kids that know nothing other than competition, know nothing other than unbridled masculinity. And one kid stands up there and goes, fuck that. I'm going to actually be real and be honest and be soft-spoken and be genuine. And a whole shit ton of them go, well, hey, I could buy into that. That's amazing.
Well,
And more of them agreed with the gun rights and the abortion yelling and the build a wall rhetoric. More
Yeah.
of them agreed with that. So
But it isn't a
once again,
zero-sum game, you know?
but it is.
I mean, we've seen the last 4 years that it kind of is in
There's
some
one
ways.
winner.
But
Yeah,
look,
yeah.
I have much more to say about this movie, but we are basically out of time at this point. So, Roxana,
Well, I feel bad, Dave. I don't mean to.
it's okay. We're out of time. Roxana, I'll give you the last word on the movie, though. What are your thoughts? How do you want to close this out on your thoughts?
I mean, I think it's impeccably made. I think it's worth watching to sort of understand how these ideas and viewpoints trickle down. And I think it's very important in terms of like we're kind of been walking the line in terms of like they're boys, they're not adults, they are shaped by the circumstances around them, etc. But boys become men, and so I think it's important to sort of get a grasp of what are these kids filtering through and who do they grow up to be. And I think it's an important watch. Your reaction might vary, as we learned from this podcast.
I think it's evidence of great art. You know, the fact that
Yeah, I agree.
the reaction is so polarized, even on this show. So I do think it's worth checking out. If you've made it this far, you haven't watched it yet, go check out Boy State. It is on Apple TV Plus, and I think that's going to wrap us up for this week's episode of the Slash Filmcast. You can find more episodes of this podcast at slashfilmcast.com. Email us at slashfilmcast@gmail.com. Our theme song comes from AdamWarrock.com. Our spoiler bumper comes from filmmaker Kyle Hillinger. Our weekly plugs music comes from Thomas Medina and Noah Ross. And stay tuned to hear what we'll be discussing next week. This episode, by the way, was edited by Beatty Zhang. Hey, by the way, Roxana, where can people find more of your work on the internet this week?
Sure. You can find my work at pajiba.com and the AV Club and Roger Ebert. I actually have stuff publishing there each day this week.
All right. Make sure you check out Roxana's work. It's really, really awesome. And I'll link also to your review of Boy State in the show notes.
Cool. Thank you.
Until next week, what we're going to be reviewing on the podcast next week, Bill and Ted Face the Music.
Another political opus. Amazing. Amazing.
if you had told me a year ago that a year from today we'd be reviewing the new Bill and Ted movie that is going straight to VOD because we're all staying home
Yeah.
because of pandemic, there would be many things I would struggle to comprehend about
You'd
that.
have many
sentence.
questions.
I'd have so many questions, but looking forward to diving into that one with you guys. All right, that's it for this week's all right, that's it for this week's episode of the Slash Filmcast. We'll see you next week. All right, Jeff, you're stopped.
Yep.
Okay. Audio's processing.
All right, Roxana, don't
Thanks,
close.
Roxana.
Don't
That
close
was
the
awesome.
the
No,
the,
no, she can close. It's
the
fine.
Chrome. Oh, she
She's
can
good.
close. Okay, she can.
No,
Yeah, it's all good.
okay.
Fast.
All right, cool. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. All right, talk
That
to you
was fun.
guys.
Thanks,
later.
Roxana.
Bye.
All right.
We still broadcasting?
Yes, we are still broadcasting.
Cool. I'm gonna run to the bathroom as we run back.
All right, I'll do the same. Let's take a 1-minute break. Cool. Please discuss Lovecraft Country, Jonathan Palermo says. Oh, I have a feeling it shall be discussed.
Okay, I'm back.
Jeff, you there?
Yeah. I'll start a new recording and then it'll go black for a second. So
Hmm.
if you don't come back, just refresh your browser after 15
Okay,
seconds.
okay.
Here we go.
Are you there?
Yep.
Hello.
Hello?
Okay.
Yep, good.
Hello. Mm-hmm.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Slash Filmcast. I am David Chen, and joining me today are...
Devendra Hardawar.
And Jeff Kanata.
Today on the podcast, we're going to just discuss what's going on in the world of film right now before moving on to some what we've been watching. Got a lot of what we've been watching to discuss today. And then we're going to conclude with an in-depth review. This week, we're going to be discussing Boys State, the new documentary that is on Apple TV+. We got Roxana Haddadi joining us for that review. Really excited about that. And I should just say, if you haven't seen Boys State, if you haven't heard of Boys State, the movie, check it out. It is really, really compelling, as you're going to hear us talk about. So yeah, if you have... if you bought an Apple product anytime in the last year, I think, right? Like any Apple hardware product, you can get Apple TV Plus for free. So we're still in that window. So check out Boys State. It's available right now on Apple TV Plus. Okay. Before we get to what we've been watching, a quick word about what's been going on the last week, just from a movie perspective. Tenet, gents, the first reviews for Tenet hit the internet.
I couldn't tell.
And so a couple things have happened, and I'm probably going to make like a YouTube video discussing this in depth, but I mean, I think that like I had some thoughts. I wanted to share them with you guys and see what you think. That Tenet is a movie that we are obviously all looking forward to quite a bit. And I actually found that there is a Cinemark near me that is hosting private parties where you can pay them $150 to book out an entire theater to watch Tenet or any of a number of other films, right? And I actually considered doing this for a little bit,
Sure.
but it's still not no risk, because I think like a lot of people think that coronavirus is transmitted through aerosol droplets, and even if I wear a mask the whole time, like what about the people who are just there in the room before me? You know, I know they sterilize everything, but I don't think they're changing out all the HVAC in the place or anything. So it's not no risk. Even if I book the entire theater out for myself, and then I saw the reviews, which were, I felt mixed. I mean, I think that it's technically has a positive Rotten Tomatoes score, right? But a lot of the high-profile reviews at places like IndieWire and The Guardian and Time Out weren't super positive on it, and even some of the stuff that's been rated fresh on Rotten Tomatoes still feels like a little bit iffy to me. So it really just makes me feel like this might not be the best cinematic experience of all time, and if so, it doesn't feel worth risking my life for. That's
Probably not.
That's kind of
Yeah.
where I'm netting on it. But yeah, what do you guys think? I mean, you know,
What
you guys
Rotten
haven't.
Tomatoes score is necessary for a $150 theater rental?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I'm not going to go to another theater probably for another 12 months at least. You know what I'm saying? So like, this would be my entire movie going budget in this one screening, right? For the next few months. But yeah, when you guys had already kind of settled on just not seeing this at all, pretty much, right? And you
I
kind
have
of
literally
resigned.
no way
for
to see
now.
it.
You have
I don't
no,
even
no
have
way
the
to see it because
option.
there's not even a theater. Like, and by the way, I should point out the theater that I described is a 40-mile drive away from Seattle. So like, I would need to, and then it's like you add up the whole thing, right? Driving, I need to take like half a day off of work at least. Drive, you know, an hour and a half down to that place. Wear like a hazmat suit inside the thing, watch a 2.5 hour long movie that maybe isn't that good, and then I'm stressed out the entire time that I might get coronavirus, and then drive like 90 minutes back. It's just like, that is tough. That is a tough sell. But Jeff, you're saying you can't even see it, so the question is solved for you anyway, right?
I have friends that were driving to Vegas to see it,
Yeah.
but
Which is
short
how
of
far
that-
away from LA?
Oh, far. It's I don't know, several hour drive. I think three and a half, something like that. I could be wrong. But yeah, it's not tenable with a family with children, and I need to be home for dinner. So yeah, there's no universe where I even get to make that decision. So
How about you, Devendra? Was it in your consideration set at all?
Honestly, I actually haven't checked to see which local theaters have it. I wouldn't be surprised if it's playing here somewhere, but given the state of things in Georgia right now, which is everything's kind of screwed and no one's really doing anything about it, I would not be planning to do this anytime soon. I will say maybe if I do find like a really late night screening where practically nobody's there, I would maybe consider it. But no, not at this point. I would give it a couple months. Maybe consider a drive-in because I actually have a car now, so I would do that trip and
I haven't been
go
to
see
I
it.
haven't been to drive-ins in this millennia, this
Yeah,
century.
they're everywhere now.
I know,
They're
but
everywhere. Yeah.
the drive-ins that I did go to when I was a kid, I think I saw Star Trek 2 at the drive-in with my parents. I remember the audio being atrocious.
They're not good.
It's better now. I saw Drive-In recently. I made a vlog about it, and
Uh-huh.
they piped the audio through the car speakers.
Oh,
Sure.
that's cool.
Is
So
it
you
through
like
FM?
tune into a
Yeah,
radio
it's an FM radio
station?
station. Yeah.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah,
Yeah, because
yeah.
we had that little like metal thing that you hang on your window. Do you remember that thing? You guys are too
Uh-huh.
young.
No,
there's
I
like
mean
a-
I've never been to a real drive-in because that didn't exist like as I was growing up. So yeah. It's a shame. So, but anyway, like I would consider a drive-in for this, even though I know not the best projection experience, not the best audio experience, no matter how good your car speakers are. I'm just really looking forward to in a couple months. I'm working on like building out my basement room to be like a kind of a home theater. So that is my tenant room, basically. And I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I think that for me, it's just I just don't think I can. I don't think I can do it. I don't think I can justify it. Even the whole renting out the theater thing, because I mean, a lot of people pointed out, right? A theater is unfortunately non-essential, right? It's there's no way you can call it essential. And people go in, they sit in one room for hours. They probably have to take the mask off if they're eating or drinking, right? So it's almost guaranteed that they will be breathing in that space. And then when I saw the reviews come out, it's just like, oh, it's just like body blow against this dream of seeing Tenet. Not only that, but if I got infected, from going to see the movie, I would become that which I hate the most, which is like someone who recklessly risked their health for a dumb reason, to go see a movie. And I just don't know if I could live with myself. It's possible that I can figure out a way to like engineer it to be even more safe than what I described, and in that case I might see it. But like at this point, like for instance, if there was like the first screening of the day, I could rent the theater, which I haven't found a theater yet that's near me and willing to do that. That I might be able to consider, but it just right now it just doesn't seem like it's in the cards. And you know what? Also, Peter Soretta pointed out to me, even if we did see it, even if we did review it on the podcast, no one would listen to that review because no one's seen the movie.
Right.
So
Well,
it's like,
we
why-
could
why-
do
Some
we
people
could
would.
do a non-spoiler Tenet discussion and then a separate episode for spoilers.
Yeah.
Really milk that Tenet. Yeah.
I don't mean this to come off as flip as it may
Yeah.
on its face appear, but there is part of me that feels very fortunate that this crisis did not happen like before
Avengers Endgame?
or before Rise of Skywalker, because there are no, as disappointed as I was with Rise of Skywalker, it's still a movie that I had to see,
Right.
right? It was, and Avengers Endgame the same way. I don't even know of any property at this point that would fit the bill. I mean, future Marvel movies, I feel like we completed that 20 however many film cycle.
Yeah.
We completed the 9 film Star Wars cycle. Like there's nothing else. I mean, I'm excited for Dune. I'm really excited for that movie, but it doesn't
It's
even
almost like
touch-
yeah, between Avengers and Skywalker, it's like 30 to 40 years of like fanboy anticipation has just like
Yeah.
it's all gotten out of the system at this point,
Yeah.
right? It's
Can you imagine, though,
you've
if
had
we
the
had been in this-
catharsis. You've had the
if we
catharsis.
had been in a situation before those 2 movies came out, I
you
don't know
you
what
would
I
be
would've done.
potentially like right now, Jeff. You're saying you can comfortably say no. Of course, I would never risk my life to see Tenet. You dumb. But a year ago, you might not have felt the same way.
Not only that, I can safely say I have a hard time imagining any movie that reaches the levels of the Endgame or Rise of Skywalker. Like I can't even conceive
or that
of a movie
or that will ever reach those again.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe there will. Maybe I hope that there will. That would be wonderful if something could achieve that again. But I feel like at least for me, for my geekdom, for my fanboyism,
Mhm.
for the things that mattered to me as a child, like we did it, everybody. We
Yeah,
can pack it
we're
in.
done.
We're done. Movies are over. Let's
Yeah.
take a rest.
Yeah, indeed. All right. Well, anyway, that's what's happening in the world of movies right now. I think I would say to everyone listening out there, if you are in the United States, don't go see Tenet. That's kind of my advice.
Dave's 2-minute review.
Especially under normal circumstances. Like when I say normal circumstances, I mean like in a theater with other people, even if it's only at like 30%
Mhm.
capacity. My advice is don't go see Tenet. No movie is worth your life.
Yeah.
And
But here's the
yeah.
thing: people will go see it. If you do see it, don't be a dick about it. How about that? That's easy.
I don't know about that. But I mean, I don't know about it being easy for people, but I agree with you that they shouldn't do that. Anyway, let's move on to what we've been watching this week. Jeff, why don't you walk us through a couple things you've been watching this week?
I've been watching a lot this week, actually. I want to start with a very short thing that is on Netflix called John Was Trying to Contact Aliens.
Yeah, this is like a 15-minute short film on Netflix,
16,
right?
yeah, 16 minutes.
Oh, sorry, Jeff. 16 minutes.
Well, when you're talking the difference between 15 and 16, it's a significant percentage of movie. You know, that's a big part.
It's like a sixth of the movie.
I'm not good at math, Dave. That's why I do a movie podcast. Before I even get there, I should
actually
say
like a 15th of the movie, but okay, go ahead, Jeff.
How could it be a 15th of the movie?
Well,
if
it's
there's
1 minute,
parts?
1 minute difference, right? So
we're just making it worse at this
I'm making
point.
it so bad right now.
The thing I want to say before we get to any of what we've been watching is, my goodness, is #/# a rousing success. I
Good job, team.
love it so much. I love #/#. Thank you everyone for the recommendations. It's easy. I literally Friday night sat down with my wife on the couch, pulled up my cell phone, looked at the #/# and went, what are we going to watch tonight? Here's some recommendations from the /Filmcast listeners. It was great. And we should have done this literally years ago. So having said that, I can't remember who it was that recommended John Was Trying to Contact Aliens, but
nailed it, Jeff. Nailed it.
But I got some other recommendations that I did remember, but thank you, whomever you are. But my goodness, has anybody else watched this? Did anybody spend the 16 minutes?
No.
I added it to my list, but I have not seen it yet.
It is really a beautiful thing. It is like it almost feels like a cone poem of a movie. You know, I know, Dave, you have lots of experience making short form documentaries, and that is I think a beautiful thing where it doesn't overstay its welcome. It doesn't need to be stretched into a full length film. It is an interesting person that is interesting for just the right amount of time, right? And this movie, it kind of proves to me the Netflix benefit, right? Which is it could be as long as it needs to be. Netflix doesn't have to be an hour, doesn't have to be 22 minutes. Whatever it is what it is. And I sat down going, that's awesome. We're going to watch a 16-minute thing. I'm just going to watch this as like a delicious aperitif, you know, it's going to be great. And I came out of it going, kind of wish that was longer. I could have seen more of that, which is great. You know, leave them wanting more, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't even want to spoil this. I think people should just watch it. It is basically about a fella in Michigan who spent his entire life trying to contact aliens, like building. It's a bit obsessive and a bit hoardery with the level of commitment he brought to it. But the movie ends up being about something completely different. And it is gorgeous. It is a beautiful, beautiful, short little poem of a movie. I don't even know if you can say movie, documentary. And I highly recommend it to everybody. It is, it's lovely.
Cool. That's John Was Trying to Contact Aliens, and it's available right now on Netflix. Jeff, why don't you take us through one more thing before we take a break?
Okay. I also checked out the new show Ted Lasso on Apple TV. This was #/tagged by Haitham Ismail and Brent Peterson. Thank you. Oh, I got my #/tag for John Was Trying to Contact Aliens. Steve Yosiro? Nailed it.
Yeah.
Anyway, Ted Lasso is the Jason Sudeikis vehicle about an American football coach going to the UK and coaching Premier League football. But guess what? Football means two different things.
Hijinks ensue.
Hijinks ensue. So there are, as of this recording, 4 episodes available on Apple TV Plus. New episodes on Friday. I have watched all 4. After the first episode, I was like, do not understand why anybody would like this. By episode 3, I was like, I love the show. I love the show. So I highly recommend anybody giving it a shot. Gives it till episode 3. Episode 1 is not really what the show is about, which is weird because the show starts with this kind of goofball Jason Sudeikis character who's got this, Southern drawl and is very plain spoken and shows up in the UK and everybody ridicules him. And it's like, why are they doing this? And it's, guess what? It's the jilted wife of the Premier League club owner who has now filed for divorce and got the club in the divorce settlement, wants to tank the team. So it's the producers, it's Major League, it's any of those where we hire the guy to make the team tank. And I was like, okay. And he gets there in the first episode and he knows nothing about soccer, right? He knows nothing about football. And it's like, well, why would anybody take this job and not actually learn anything? It just felt stupid. But it reveals itself over the next 2 episodes, or at least it did to me, to be something quite different. And that is this wonderfully earnest, lovely comedy about a good person trying to be good in the face of cynicism. And I found that to be really a breath of fresh air because, ever since I think, Arrested Development, The Office, every comedy is now, how awful can these people be? I mean, we literally have shows called You're the Worst or, terrible people being terrible. It's just all about how cynical.
Man, I hate terrible people being terrible, by the way.
Yeah.
Terrible show.
Yeah. You would think maybe terrible people being good would be interesting.
Yeah,
that's the hook,
seriously.
right?
Take a chance.
That's the hook. Yeah. There's another show called something like that, right? You're the Worst and
Terrible people.
I hate terrible people and I
Just terrible people. Yeah.
Okay. Isn't there like I hate you or something? I don't know. There's a lot of that kind of.
There's a lot of that.
Yeah. There's a lot of just like how awful can these humans be? And to be fair, I've enjoyed a number of those shows. Watching a number of those shows. You're the Worst. Found very fun, but it's a really lovely breath of fresh air where it's like, okay, here's a whole group of people that are cynical and kind of cutting and snide. And here's this Ted Lasso character thrown in the middle of it. And the first episode makes him seem like a buffoon, which I was like, well, I don't, that's not fun. There's nothing interesting about that. But what the subsequent episodes at least revealed to me was that the show really thinks highly of him, that he actually is, there's a method to his buffoonery, and he actually is just being a really decent person trying to do good. And it's lovely. I really kind of fell in love with the show. I highly recommend Ted Lasso, but do not judge it by its first episode.
Devindra, you also watched Ted Lasso, right?
Not Ted Lasso. I saw another show that we'll talk about after the break.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind then. Beatty, please remove this section of the podcast. That is Ted Lasso, and it's available right now on Apple TV Plus. Jeff Canado, what else have you been watching this week?
Well, I wanted to talk briefly about another Netflix documentary series that just debuted that is in my wheelhouse. It's called High Score. It's a very high budget, well produced video game documentary, and it really chronicles video games from their very start. The first game that they really focus on in the documentary is Space Invaders. But then from there, it chronicles the early history in detail of the arcades and the home console systems, Atari 2600, and on through Nintendo and moving up to more modern times. I guess there's a theme in this week's episode where I talk about how fucking old I am, but I lived all this, right? I lived all of it. I owned an Atari 2600 and I played Pong and was obsessed with Pac-Man as a young kid and had Pac-Man sheets on my bed and Pac-Man plates and went as Pac-Man for Halloween. I was obsessed with all of that stuff. So I was into it, and there's a lot of information in High Score, this documentary series, that I found that I didn't know. So in that sense, really appreciated the level of detail and how much unknown, at least to me, facts about the origins of the industry, how some of these things happen. For example, Ms. Pac-Man is like a mod boards. Like these three dudes like made mod boards, and then they got sued, and in the settlement for their lawsuit, got hired on the company that sued them and made Ms. Pac-Man out of Pac-Man boards. It's fascinating stuff. Unfortunately, I really, really don't like the style of this show. It really feels like it's speaking to 8-year-old kids.
I remember when we talked about. I remember when we talked about Game Master, that documentary. And you felt like it was pretty respectful and in depth of the art, right? Like it's kind of like, you know, a lot of coverage is like, oh my gosh, you won't believe the blah blah blah, right? Like it's very like surface level and sensationalistic, whereas Game Master was not that. Is High Score on Netflix closer to that style that you didn't like?
I don't know if I would describe it exactly that way, but it kind of leans into the goofball. It doesn't have, I think, the courage to trust that the information itself is interesting.
Right.
It feels like, you know what it is? Honestly, it's trying too hard. It really is. Like, for example, I think it's episode 2 or 3. There's it talks about this. It interviews one of the first members of the Nintendo Power hotline, where I don't know if you remember this, but for a long time Nintendo had a phone number that you could call if you were stuck in any game on the NES. If no matter what the game, you could call this number and they would walk you through how to get through it.
I remember calling that once, by the way, and they were absolutely useless. So thanks a lot, Nintendo Power.
This documentary makes it seem like they were, you know, superheroes. They had to learn every game and had these big manuals of it. It's fascinating from a factual standpoint, from an informational standpoint, but the methodology they use to deliver the information is they interview this guy who was one of the, you know, young kids who worked there. And in the pictures of him working there in the early 80s, he had a mullet. So in every piece of video they have of him now, they put him in a mullet wig. And it's like, okay. I mean, that's a bit, I guess, but and that's just one example. I think that the tone overall varies wildly. Sometimes it's really, really respectful. I mean, they get big names, and it's really also, I think, one of the points of its to its credit is they talk to people who wouldn't be, I think, focused on by maybe other filmmakers. Like they pick out maybe more unsung heroes of the video game origin story, and I think that's great. There are, while they do talk to the big players as well, there are a number of interesting people that stand out because they've been overlooked, unfortunately, over time. But all too often, it relies on this sort of goofy, wacky, like, we're worried we're losing your interest, so we're going to do something. You know, it has a tone too often for my taste that felt trying too hard. Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that. Is it worth pressing through that for the material though? Because I did when I saw it on Netflix, I was like, what does Jeff think of this? You know?
I had a hard time. Yeah, I really had a hard time watching it. You know, I honestly was like, I watched it to get through it, and like I said, they're gems. They're gems, nuggets of information that are really cool. And honestly, I also feel perhaps that your mileage may vary. My own particular knowledge base with regard to this, because I lived through it and was very, very obsessed with video games during that time, perhaps it would be even more, you know, can't think of words. It would be even more educational to someone that perhaps is younger or wasn't around during those times, or doesn't know the history of some of these companies, or maybe didn't have the firsthand experience that I personally did. So, you know, because I was covering video games when I was 14 professionally, so I was kind of tied into that, and I'm not trying to toot my own horn. I'm just saying that I come at this from a very particular point of view, and maybe some of that information that they're trying to jazz up to me was like, yeah, no, I already get it. You don't have to make it interesting. It's already interesting.
Yeah. Well, that's High Score. It's on Netflix right now. Maybe I'll check out an episode, decide from there. But I'm
Yeah.
sorry that you weren't super jazzed about it, Jeff. What else have you been watching this week, Jeff?
Well, I think we're going to talk about Lovecraft Country a little bit. I think Devindra and I are going to have a conversation, just the two of us. That's my
Yeah, I think
understanding.
we're
Oh,
gonna
really?
ban Dave from this
Yeah.
section.
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
Yeah.
okay. Okay.
yeah.
All
I don't know
right.
if you want to do that now or when we get around to Devindra's what we've been watching.
Yeah. Why don't we hold off on that? Hold off on
Yeah.
that. Okay.
All right, so I just want to briefly mention there was a big WWE event this weekend, and I know I usually don't talk about WWE on the show unless it's WrestleMania, but the other big, the sort of, if WrestleMania is the A, the B show for the entire year in the WWE is SummerSlam, right? It takes place in the summer, and the thing with WWE lately is that it's COVID. We can't put people in a big room and make them watch live sports anymore, or even sports entertainment for that matter. And I mentioned when COVID was very fresh and new and WrestleMania happened in March, that, or maybe it was April, whatever, that it was a very strange experience, because I think one of the essential elements of that product, of that experience, of the thing I like about professional wrestling is the crowd interaction. And there was no crowd. They did WrestleMania in an empty gymnasium. And it was very strange, and I didn't like it, and I didn't think it worked, save for the Undertaker outdoor match. But the reason I'm bringing up SummerSlam is because, I don't know if you guys know this, but WWE has done something very interesting. I don't know if you guys have seen any of the NBA games where they have sort of, fake fans in the audience,
Mm-hmm.
WWE has taken this a step further. And I bring it up because I think you guys will be fascinated by this, like I have been. They put over 1,000 individual LED screens in stands that they built. They built a custom new place. They're calling it the Thunderdome. And it's tiered like you would have, like, stadium seating, except in those seats, they're not seats. There's no seats at all. It's just these portrait mode on their end LED screens. And they are letting individual fans have access to the screen. On their website, you sign up and you agree to certain terms, which are that you will be present at a certain time. You'll check in. You'll be in front of your camera at all times. You will not wear anything offensive. You will not do anything offensive. You will not, hold up any sign that is offensive. And in return, your face will be one of the 1,000+ faces in the quote unquote crowd. And they're pumping in crowd noise, and sort of, I think, I'm sure it's fake. It super helps, believe me. It helps the product not sound ridiculous. But I can only imagine what kind of technological undertaking that was, because the first time someone stands up and shows their junk on a camera, right? They have to have an army of people watching all of these screens and able to swap them out at any given time. If there's a problem, like if somebody's going to do, and of course somebody's going to do something, right?
Right. That was actually the first example I thought of, the one you said, Jeff. Like,
Showing your junk.
How do you stop that? And you just have to have people monitoring all of the monitors, right?
It's got to be like on a delay, like you would have for bleeping a swear word or something. But you do that with, I'm imagining just an army of people staring at those screens, making sure and with a button press they can swap to a different, swap it to blank, or swap to a different fan.
But to be fair, Jeff, there's nothing stopping people from doing that in real life too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So-
I mean, I think social pressure is a little different, but yeah.
But fair point. It's
I don't
interesting to
know,
see how the different
isn't it
sports
fascinating?
leagues. Yeah. It's interesting to see how the different sports leagues have managed this, right?
Yeah.
The Daily, the New York Times podcast, did an episode about the NBA bubble being one of the most successful bubbles out there right now, where they've been able to keep all the players away, like kind of sectioned off in, I think, Disney World is where they are.
Yeah, they're in
and
Orlando, yeah.
Not contacting anyone else, not coming in contact with anyone else. They had like a beeper that if you come within 6 feet of someone, your beepers will start going off like it's a proximity sensor. And it's also, I assume, would help in contact tracing as well if ever there was an outbreak. So it's just fascinating to see what people are doing to give us some sense of normalcy. And also, obviously, there's a lot of financial stakes that these people have in these sports events going forward. So interesting. So the event was SummerSlam, right?
Yeah. It also shows me that somebody thought it was worth spending that kind of money because we are nowhere near being done with this.
That's not a solution you spend something on if you're like, we're going to use this 6 times and throw it away, right? Like,
Exactly.
It feels like we're going to be in this for a while. I mean,
Yeah.
I am assuming we're going to be dealing with this in some capacity for years, and that like we're not going to be able to go out into like crowded events safely for at least a year is where I'm at right now. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's SummerSlam. How'd you watch it, Jeff?
WWE.com is a service.
All right. I'll just mention really quickly, I had a chance to check out The Vow, which is a new documentary series that debuted on HBO Max or HBO this weekend. Did you guys hear about this documentary? You might have seen some pre-roll ads for it.
Yeah, it's constantly ads for it. And at first it was like, oh, this is a story about something positive. And then I went, oh, no. The second ad was like, well, this is real dark.
I think it's like a vow. It's called The Vow. And then like you see it's called like the Nexium story or a Nexium story. And it's about this thing called Nexium, which is spelled Nxivm, but it's pronounced Nexium like the antacid drug. And it's basically about a Scientology-esque cult and what happens to the people who were involved in it. And the very first moments, the first episode, you find out that I think the head of Nexium was indicted on charges of racketeering and other terrible things for running what was publicly called a sex cult. And then the first episode then like kind of rewinds and takes you way back. And what's fascinating about the first episode is it shows you why people got involved in this thing, right? It's kind of like, in some ways, the first episodes of Wild Wild Country, which is another documentary we discussed, another cult-like situation we discussed here on the podcast, where you see people whose lives were profoundly altered for the better because they joined this cult, right? Because they joined this group of people who had like positive messages. They had these weird rituals that on the outside look bizarre, but like when you think of like any rituals that we do in reality, all of our rituals are kind of weird. And
nobody joins the cult for the murders, Dave. You know what I'm saying? You work up to the murders.
I know. It's a good point, and it's a documentary like The Vow that makes you remember this, you know? And so that's what the first episode is about. It's about like, why did people get involved in the first place? What did they get out of it? And I assume the next episodes are going to delve into what happens afterwards. But I have to say, I thought the first episode was really well done. And it kind of made me feel like, okay, I'm in good hands with these filmmakers. I'm probably going to keep watching it. So that is The Vow. And it's available right now on HBO. I'll also mention this. Which is something else I watched. People, I think this is a #/tag, but people have also been mentioning this to me on Twitter separately than the hashtag, which is that there's a documentary on Netflix called Love on the Spectrum.
Yeah.
And it's all right. I mean, basically, I had a long week last week, and I ended up watching Married at First Sight on Netflix. Have you guys heard of this show?
Yes.
No, but the title says it all, Dave.
Very, very well explained.
These experts match people up, and then they get married the first day they meet. And then they need to decide whether or not they're going to stay together or not. And it's like one of the worst things I've ever watched in my entire life. I
14 hours. I stuck with it to the end. I hated every second, but my goodness, 14 straight hours of television.
I mean, the reason I'm talking the way I am is because I'm deeply ashamed that I watched this show. You know, And I tweeted about how I was really sad that I watched it, and people have recommended, we should watch Love on the Spectrum instead. So these two shows could not be more different in their approach to the subject matter. Married at First Sight is trash. The show is trash. It's like reality television, but not even like, because I think reality television can be good, right? And this show is not good. It's one of those reality TV
Only
shows.
there was some clue as to whether it would be good.
If only I could have seen any of the warning signs that indicated that Married at First Sight would not be an uplifting show.
The summary actually said, David Chen, do not watch this. What are you doing? I clicked anyway.
And so anyway, I tweeted that I was watching the show and feeling really, really bad about myself, and people recommended I watch Love on the Spectrum. I watched one episode of Love on the Spectrum.
Because like fire, the only thing that can fight reality television is reality television. Am I right?
Well, that's the thing is, I would argue that Love on the Spectrum is less of a reality TV show and more akin to a documentary. It's not. I don't think it is quite a documentary, because I do think the producers are engineering some component of it. Is my sense, but it is not nearly as offensive or as shallow as Married at First Sight. I think it's actually very compassionate, very understanding, very thoughtful about its subjects, and it's a heartwarming show that kind of makes you think about the nature of love. And I would highly recommend Love on the Spectrum, and I would not recommend Married at First Sight, both of which are available on Netflix. So, Jeff, it sounded like you got recommended Love on the Spectrum as well, right?
I did, and I wasn't going to say this, but I don't think I can bring myself to watch that show. I fear I would be I would be a blubbering mess. And there are many shows where I talk about ugly crying. We were talking about Speed Cubers as an example. But the difference is I didn't know that about Speed Cubers before I got in. Right? I enjoyed it because I probably would never have turned it on if I had known it would do that to me.
Didn't I tell you? Oh, we watched it the same week, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I predated you watching it.
I know this is gonna destroy me, and I don't think I can bring myself to push play. So
interesting. Is it like you have kind of? I just want to understand how it works. You have like emotional reserves, basically, and anything that's going to substantially use that, you want to be careful how you spend it down. Is that right?
I think that's a pretty good way of saying it. It's more like I feel like I'm pretty well beat down these days, and while sometimes, Speed Cubers was very cathartic and beautiful release of emotion, and maybe this show would be as well, but I don't relish that. I'm not looking for that. Like when it happened, I was like, oh, this is great. And maybe that would, I have a feeling I would probably love it, but the idea of, it's like sitting down to watch, I don't know, Requiem for a Dream, or it's like, are you ever in the mood to watch that movie? Does it like, what you're getting yourself into? It's like,
did you just compare Speed Cubers and Love on the Spectrum to Requiem for a Dream?
Well, the first movie that popped into my head was Schindler's List, so let's all be glad I didn't do that.
You've never gotten in trouble for comparing movies to Schindler's List, have you, Jeff?
No, not movies. But the idea being the experience that what you're gonna get, right? It's gonna be emotionally draining, and I have a hard time getting over the hump of deciding to get into the emotionally draining place. Once I've started watching something and it ends up being emotionally draining, I usually am like, oh, this is wonderful. But it's the idea of like, I'm gonna sit down and just obliterate myself. I have a hard time.
I'm going to welcome my own annihilation.
Yeah.
My emotional health is completely destroyed at this point. Yeah, no, I understand. Well, anyway, those who wish to have a cathartic experience may wish to watch Love on the Spectrum. And if you want to have an experience in which you feel bad about yourself, Married at First Sight is also a great choice. Both shows are on Netflix right now.
By the way, Jeff, when you really want to destroy yourself, go watch Normal People. Because,
Yeah.
oh man,
Yeah.
man,
Yeah, I'm not gonna do that.
it'll get you.
Devindra Hardawar, what have you been watching this week?
Oh, a couple of things. I finally saw Lovecraft Country
Woo!
through.
too.
No thanks to David Chen.
No,
I
neither
did
of us. We had
see-
to watch it after its air date.
Mm.
Ugh. Yeah.
Like the
like a
riffraff.
couple of shumps.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah, I don't
Couple
know.
of-
It's not great.
A couple of non-Chan friends. You know what I'm saying?
So I have to say, I really loved the first episode. I thought I did a great job of setting up this world and just like the crazy visuals of what it is. Love the cast, love everything. Especially which Smollett is in this one? Is it Jesse Smollett? No, Journey
Smollett.
Yeah, I get them all. I get all the Smollets confused because they have very similar names. But Journey Smollett, who I love very much from Birds of Prey and so many things. She was in Friday Night Lights, like towards the later
Yeah,
seasons,
It
and
sure was.
she was fantastic there. She is great here, doing the Scream Queen thing and doing very good at running away from scary things in a horror movie type setting. So I think that's good. The second episode gives me a little pause. I do wonder where they're going with this. I have not read the book. It just feels like things are moving very quickly, and I don't really have time to like sit back and absorb what is happening to these characters and this overall mystery. And some of it just feels pretty hokey, but I enjoy the visuals. I love the characters, so I'm gonna keep going with it.
Yeah, I'm on that page, but I think a little bit more amplified because in both cases, I thought the first episode was near perfect. I just was bowled over by it, by how much money they must have spent on that first episode. It just feels like the money was on the screen. It was gorgeously shot. It had these lavish period settings with a street party that was just so sumptuous and beautifully lit, and it just felt like this stepping into another time and place. And then the second half of the first episode was pulse pounding and edge of your seat excitement, and man, it just had everything. I loved the characters. I thought the mystery was beautifully laid out. I couldn't wait to find out more about what the magic of this world was going to be about and the rules of this world. And then the second episode felt like an utter train wreck to me. It just I felt like I watched what should have been an entire season of television in 50 minutes.
It felt like a season finale of something.
Not even a season finale. It felt like we compressed all of the beats of a season. It's like, okay, we're looking for Dad. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but everything that they set up like happens, and you're like, well, I thought that was our arc for this whole season was going to happen. and things are completely unexplained, and stuff just comes out of nowhere, and there's like time shifting, and you don't it was just like, what?
I think it's more the things coming out of nowhere that bugs me. Like from a plot perspective, it feels like we're getting too much, but especially with a story like this, I want to sit back and drink in this setting and these characters. I think Jonathan Majors is doing an incredible job. And we just don't get to spend time with these characters and what they think and how they're going.
The first episode we did, it was a beautifully paced first episode. We got to hang out with them and like, fall into like with all these, I really enjoy these people, and their relationships were interesting. And, we have this lovely scene in the first episode of Uncle George and his wife, like just being in bed in love with each other and just snuggling. And we get some sense of who she is and that she's really a smart cookie and could be writing the travel logs herself. And it's like, we get to spend all of this lovely time with all these characters. And then the second episode is like, fuck that. We ain't got time for that shit. There's 14 people. There's a really scary castle. Guess what? Castle's gone. Moving on. Who cares? It's like, what whiplash, man. It's unreal. I don't understand. These two episodes are from the same show. It's like, what is going on? Give us some time to react to the revelation before the revelation is completely irrelevant. It's wild.
Yeah, pretty much. It's kind of how I felt watching this was my feeling of Avengers Infinity War, of just like things happening, things, plot, characters. And I need time to drink things in. So there's that. Did you have any further thoughts, Dave? You feel free to chime in.
Sorry, I didn't know I was part of this conversation.
Yeah.
I agree completely with what Jeff said. I think the second episode was virtually incomprehensible. The pilot was one of the best pilots I've ever seen in my whole life. Right,
Yeah,
like
so good.
it's so good, and then for them to follow it up with the second episode, I'm willing to stick by it, but it's just like
Yeah.
oof. And also, by the way, I've heard some pretty rough stuff is coming from an Asian perspective. With regards to the racial politics of the show, so and like episode 2 did nothing to quell my fears about that. So I am, I'm wary.
I
I'm
really
wary.
hope this does not become another Walking Dead, where there's like a perfect pilot, and then pretty much the rest of it is trash. So
We'll,
I don't know.
we'll see. But that's Lovecraft Country. Amazing pilot, really, really rough second episode, and we'll see how the show progresses from here. It's on HBO Max, by the way.
Yes.
Devindra, what else have you been watching?
I did see that Tesla biopic by Michael Almereyda, and this is a really interesting movie. So it stars Ethan Hawke as Tesla, has a really great cast all around. Like Kyle MacLachlan's in this as Thomas Edison, and this is a really fun, irreverent take on Tesla's life and kind of his story and everything. And it is a low budget movie, but it employs a lot of like tricks to really tell the story. Like there'll be a point where some characters are just talking about like if you Google Nikola Tesla, you'll find all these things while they're in their period clothes and playing a period character or something. There's a lot of modern music in it. It's stylish, it's energetic. I really dug it, especially because it felt so unconventional. But I can understand, like, if you're looking for a straightforward biopic, something that maybe is a little more serious, it may be disappointing. And this is from the guy who did the modern adaptation of Hamlet with Ethan Hawke back in like 2002. So, he tries to do different things with these adaptations, and I can't fault him for it. Like I remember seeing that movie back in the day, and it was certainly weird, but it was at least like he swung for a really interesting adaptation of Hamlet. This is worth watching, especially if you're interested in the Nikola Tesla story. I think Ethan Hawke does some great work here too, as sort of like he's not even putting on much of an accent, but he is embodying, a broken genius who feels like he just doesn't belong in the world. He's somebody who's always maybe several decades ahead of everybody else. So yeah, I think he really embodies the tragedy of that really well. And this movie's really well made. So just check it out. It's fun. It's a fun, interesting biopic.
I'm intrigued. I think
Tesla.
Ethan Hawke's been picking such interesting projects at this part of his career. I'm like intrigued just when I see Ethan Hawke is doing something.
It's a good phase for him. Like he's always trying to do something a little different. So like he'll go from like freaking I don't know, like he'll do First Reformed, which I think is a fantastic movie, but then he will pop up in Valerian, right? Or other things. So like he's all over the place,
That's
but
true.
I'm really digging it.
I've heard that Tesla kind of reinvents the biopic formula, so I'm kind of interested. In that.
I wouldn't go that far. Like I think the Steve Jobs movie, reinvented the biopic formula, and people hated that because of what it did. This feels like a really fun. I've seen biopics like this before. I've seen movies that try to take a historical character and try to spice it up or bring in some like wry modern reverency or something. But it's good and it's worth it. It's worth it alone for. I'm not even going to spoil it. There's a point where Ethan Hawke sings something in this movie. I think it's kind of great.
All right, well that is Tesla. It's available right now on video on demand. Devindra, did you buy it or rent it?
I bought it.
Blind
I'm buying the movies. I need
bought
to.
the Tesla.
Yeah, I
bought
bought
a
the Tesla.
Tesla.
This is the only Tesla I'll ever be able to buy. Let me just say that. But I did buy the Tesla. I am, especially if it's an independent movie that is vaguely well reviewed. I'm going to pay for it. I'm not putting my movie money anywhere, So
Yeah.
I got to support these things.
Yeah, that's what I was saying earlier with the Tenet thing. It's like we're not spending nearly as much money on movies as we usually would otherwise.
Yeah,
right? So,
but I feel like Tenet. I don't know. That movie's going to see money, right? The Tesla biopic probably. No.
yeah, I mean it's the Tesla biopic is no Tenet when it comes to box office takes.
Exactly.
So, yeah. All right. Let's move on. Before we get to our weekly plugs and our review, I want to thank all the people who donated to the podcast. I want to thank, first of all, Chris Gamulia. Apparently he donated quite a while ago, and I forgot to list him, so that's my bad. JT from Florida donated this week. He writes, "Happy 40th birthday to Phil, my brother-in-law. He's running 40 miles for his birthday this year.
Whoa,
We both love
nice.
the podcast, and he listens to you guys when he runs." Jeff Canada, you're a runner, right? What's the longest
am.
you've ever run?
Well, I've done 7 marathons.
Damn.
And so those are nowhere near 40 miles. I mean, those are 23.2. But I've also done 2 Ragnar races
Wow.
where you go 200 miles, but that's in a group of 7 people, 6 people. So yeah, but no, I've never run 40 at a stretch. That is very impressive. That's ultra marathon style.
Incredible. Thanks also to Nathan Trent from Perth, Australia for...
I said 23.2. It's 26.2. I'm an idiot. I've run 7 of them. You don't remember the last 3 miles.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
you blacked out for those.
What a doofus I am.
Nathan Trent from Perth, Australia. Also, Neil Harris, who writes, "Hey guys, genuinely love the show and the lightheartedness joking between the 3 of you. I would like to dedicate this donation on behalf of my amazing wife, Lindsay Harris, and our 6-year anniversary. We started our relationship off like a mix between Before Sunset and the Rocky Horror Picture Show. It eventually blossomed to a mix between Moulin Rouge and The Great Gatsby. Now with 3 young kids running around, it seems like we're stuck in Groundhog's Day playing 3 men and a baby. I love you, and I can't wait to see which movie our next chapter becomes." That's from Neil Harris.
I love that. I'm trying to parse that. I get the last one. I get the Groundhog's Day 3 men and a baby thing. I'm in that too. But the first 2 are a little more enigmatic. I like it.
Yeah, Moulin Rouge and Great Gatsby, I got to point out, not known for having really positive romances with good endings.
Yeah, good endings. Yeah, no.
It didn't go so well.
Not really, yeah.
I like a Before Sunset with Rocky Horror. Feels freaky. I
That's
love
great.
it.
That's great. But yeah, Moulin Rouge and The Great Gatsby, maybe the first act of those films, right?
Yeah.
But it just, anyway, okay. Let's move on. Also to our monthly donors, Pete Baravesh, Mel Dussault, Judson White, Sophie Elizabeth Johnson, Kong Huynh, and Andreas Stenland. Thanks so much for your contributions at a regular rate per month. We really, really appreciate it. If you want to support the Slash Filmcast, go to slashfilm.com, click on the Slash Filmcast tab, use the PayPal links on the side of the page. You can also go to paypal.me/filmcast. It's paypal.me/filmcast. All right. Before we have our review, let's get to weekly plugs. This is weird.
I wanted them to be super excited.
Rods, reels, and romance.
So good.
We're texting each other furiously.
I love that you did that.
Unsolicited. Let me tell you, I think in a way it takes a lot to get us to furiously text.
So good.
Unsolicited.
All over the place. So good. So good.
Let the internet have its way.
Plugs. But we might cut it down. All right. Welcome to
That's
weekly
the
plugs.
So good. We might get it. What makes me laugh?
The part of the podcast each week where we recommend something that we've been working on, or maybe that someone else has been working on.
You know why that makes me laugh, Dave? It's because every time I don't believe it's part of the thing. I feel like you're saying we're gonna like you're
Like
stepping
on
in
second
and you're
thought,
like,
this
yeah,
whole thing
we're
is
gonna
bad.
cut it down.
Yeah.
Every
yeah.
time
Yeah,
it gets me.
That's fair. Couple quick plugs this week. On Culturally Relevant, my other podcast, I interview Jesse Moss, one of the directors of Boy State, which is a movie we're about to review. And when I say I interview him, I mean that is an interview that hopefully will happen this week. It's scheduled that. It's always going out on a limb when you're promising an interview that hasn't happened yet. So many things can go wrong in the interview scheduling process, and maybe it doesn't happen and you just never get to hear this interview. And if that's the case, I'm genuinely sorry. But if everything goes according to plan, you're going to hear an interview with Jesse Moss, the director of Boy State, on Culturally Relevant. Check that out and subscribe to make sure you don't miss it. Also, I gave my wife a haircut this week. It was one of the things. It was a Patreon goal that I would give my wife a haircut and film it And if you want to see how that turned out,
Did she agree to this goal, or are you just telling her now?
it was
Like
an
her-
involuntary Patreon goal. no, it was her idea. It was
I
her
will
idea.
sneak up behind my wife and give her a haircut.
Like Jackass style, like on the show.
Yeah.
No, it was her idea to make it a Patreon goal. She was very encouraging. I think in retrospect, it's not a super appealing Patreon goal. As someone put it, I'm not going to donate to Patreon to see you give your wife a terrible haircut. And that makes, when he says it like that, it makes more sense. But I will just say that you should check out this video, this vlog I made of giving my wife a haircut.
Can we at least find out if she was happy with it?
I will say she was moderately happy with it. And I'll
Moderately,
leave it at that.
that's a win. That's a win. in
I
my
agree.
book. As somebody
Overall,
who's clearly never given a hair, you've never given a haircut, right?
never.
Yeah.
I can barely cut my own hair. I mean, I shave my own head using an electric razor.
You're no Vidal Sassoon. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying, Jeff. I know what you're saying. Anyway, check out that vlog. It's on my YouTube channel. Devendra Hardawar, you got something to recommend this week, right?
I got something. Let me tell you, folks. Republic City Dispatch is back. The Legend of Korra is now on Netflix. So,
What is
round it
Republic
up.
City Dispatch, for those who don't know?
It is the Legend of Korra podcast that I did with Dave Gonzalez, Matt Patches, and Joanna Robinson back in the day. Pretty much, man, 6 years ago. It was a while. Actually, wasn't it? It was 8 years ago. I think it was 2012 this thing started. It was a while ago. We were all in very different places. So we are going back and reviewing the series, like from the perspective of time, and also looking at it, seeing how new fans are taking it and everything too. So we're doing it one book at a time. It is 4 seasons, so we'll be doing each.
That's great.
So check that out.
What a great idea.
So, and what's funny is that people who have had that, subscription on their feeds for the past 8 years or so, all of a sudden it lit back up. It is kind of that rare thing where a podcast you once subscribed to can still like ping and still be alive once in a while. So yeah, you can subscribe to us everywhere. I believe you can also find it at fightinginthewarroom.com/Korra. Come listen to us talk about Legend of Korra. And if you have not seen Avatar: The Last Airbender, you should watch that. That is the show you should all be watching right now.
It's so good.
Mhm.
Jeff Kanata, your weekly plug?
Well, I promise I won't say this every single week, but I just started on the Cameo recently. I'm not quite done 20 of them, but I'm getting close to 20, and I'm real proud of them. I wanted to read you one of the several reviews I've gotten on my Cameo page. If you don't know what Cameo is, it's an app, and I believe a website as well, where you can pay for people to talk to you, to send you a message or send a message on your behalf. I decided, I was urged by friends and Dave
Wow. Okay.
I didn't get no invite. Friends got invites, bro, to that screening. That's all I'm saying.
To the DOP.
Yeah, to the DOP. Anyway, I was urged to share limericks with more folks, and I have been writing limericks, almost 20 limericks at this point on Cameo, and I wanted to read a review left for me unsolicited. This is just somebody who said, quote, "When looking for the perfect 1-year anniversary gift, one may go for the traditional gift of something paper or perhaps some jewelry, but as I can now testify, the best way to sum up your appreciation for your loved one is in the form of a limerick." Jeff absolutely nailed this with such a thoughtful and clever message that had us laughing and tearing up at the same time. As longtime /Filmcast listeners, this blew us away, and I cannot recommend this enough. Thanks, Jeff. So there's a number of very positive reviews, and people have sent me thank you notes, and it's lovely, and I'm so proud of it. And if you have any occasion, doesn't have to be an anniversary, birthday, really just a pick me up, any anniversary. I've done a number of things. I even did my first announcement of a child coming in limerick form, which was a delight to do. Although I probably shouldn't say that. We have to cut that out. I don't know if that's been delivered yet.
No, so here's the thing is I cannot say that I have not gone to Jeff Kanata's Cameo page and watched a crap ton of his limericks,
Oh, thanks. Are they all there? You can go and just watch them?
So the way
I don't know
Cameo
how that
works, the way, yeah, it's like the way Cameo works is when the person buys the Cameo, they select whether they want it to be public or not.
Oh,
And
interesting.
basically, Jeff, you have not even gone to your own page and seen what's there, have you?
No, I'm too busy working on writing limericks.
Yeah. Okay. So, Jeff, if you go to your page, there's a shit ton of cameos that you've made that people can
Yeah.
watch to decide whether
Oh,
they
cool.
want to buy a Cameo or not.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, I
Um,
guess you don't really get the context of knowing what the information people gave me to create the limerick, but I mean, maybe it comes through. But I've been really proud of how I've worked in people's tidbits of info and stuff. So, oh, that's cool.
I did get this email, Jeff. I'm sorry I didn't prep you with this, but I thought I'd just read this on the air because I got this email right when the podcast began tonight. Diane from Redondo Beach, California writes, I just listened to the Project Power episode and Jeff's comment about people not sending him enough information for his Cameo limericks. I went to purchase one for my husband for our 7-year wedding anniversary, and I discovered there is a 250 character limit in the description. I don't know if that's a Cameo default or one Jeff put on, but I'd love to provide more than 250 characters so Jeff has enough fodder for his limerick response. Jeff, any thoughts on getting a longer description to you via this email address, perhaps? You know, it just occurred to me, Jeff, this probably shouldn't have been read on the air. But I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it on the air. You know, because
Yeah. Well, I will address that. First of all, I don't make the character limit. There may be a way for me to take it off. No idea. I'll check that. But
there isn't. Yeah.
there's also a full sort of message back and forth thing. I don't know if I have to respond before they get another 250, but if you are pushed up against the limit, you can say in your 250, like, I would love to give you more. In fact, I had somebody who said, I'd love to give you more info. And I said, oh, here's
then
my
you
email
have to
address.
reply basically, and you have to say,
And then
like,
I
yes,
literally
yes.
sent that person my email address, and they sent me a huge amount of information about their friend, which was very helpful. So yeah, I'm perfectly willing to engage in that way.
All right.
It
Well,
helped me because it's hard to make limericks when you don't know enough.
I appreciate Jeff's wordplay, and you can actually just go to Jeff's page and watch the cameos that people agree
Hey,
to
it's
make
Jeff
available, and it's pretty fun. So I'd recommend it.
Thanks. Yeah, cameo.com/Jeff Canada.
All right. I think that's going to bring us to our review of Boy State.